Hi everyone, Yasas que Carlos to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a pastry that tastes almost like an almond croissant. Honestly, it's even better if you ask me. So easy to make, really quick to do also if you have some guests coming over and you have all of these ingredients which are really basic. If you've been following me for a while, you probably already have these on hand because I use them a lot. Like I said, it's delicious, it's easy, and it really impresses, and it goes so well with coffee. Let's get started. Okay, so we're going to begin with the puff pastry. I like to buy these large puff pastry sheets from my local restaurant supply shop. They're 10 by 15 inches each sheet. They weigh about 12 ounces, which is 340 grams, and I love them because they just make the perfect pastries and turnovers, and I like to use them for Napoleons and all different things. But for this recipe, I'm going to cut them into 5-inch squares. This recipe makes between 10 or 11 pastries, so I'm going to use these 2 sheets, and I'll have some left over. I'll just save the little squares for another recipe. Cut them into the 5-inch squares, and then put them on baking trays that have been lined with parchment paper. If you can't find these sheets, feel free to use the smaller sheets and just make smaller turnovers. That's fine too. Next, we're going to make the frangipane, which is the almond paste, and it's so easy to make. In a large bowl, go ahead and combine 2 eggs that are at room temperature, half a cup of granulated sugar. I melted a stick, which is 4 ounces of butter. This is unsalted butter, and I'm going to add that to the bowl, whisk it all up. Then I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of pure almond extract. Make sure you're using pure extracts. They have the best flavor. And 1 teaspoon of vanilla. I don't measure the vanilla, but I definitely do measure the almond. If you put too much in, it tends to get a little bit bitter. And whisk everything together until it's nice and smooth. Next, I'm going to add 1.5 cups of almond flour. And I store my almond flour in the freezer so it can keep fresh. I don't use it too often, so I want it to stay nice and fresh so it doesn't end up in the garbage. So before I use it in a recipe, I like to keep it out at room temperature for a little bit. And I'm also going to zest some of a lemon. I'm not going to use the whole zest, just a little bit to add some freshness. And I still want that almond flavor. I don't want it to be too lemony. I just want a little hint of freshness in this. And go ahead and whisk everything together until it's nice and smooth. And just like that, the almond paste is ready. Set it aside. Next, I'm just going to get my pear ready. I love the combination of almond and pear. You can definitely leave the pear out, but it does add a little hint of something special in this pastry once it's done. So I'm going to take a pear and cut it in half lengthwise. And using a spoon, I'm just going to remove the core and any hard bits. And then I'm going to thinly slice it about 1/4 inch thick, just like this. And now we're ready to put everything together. So I'm going to take 1 square at a time, and I'm going to put a hefty tablespoon of the frangipane or the almond paste in the center. I kind of line it up so the tip is pointed up and it's shaped kind of like a diamond. And you'll see why it just looks prettier in the end when it's all ready. And I'm going to add 2 slices of pears. I did go a little bit overboard and I put 3 in some of these pastries, and then I ran out of pears in the end. But you can always slice an extra pear if you want more pear on the almond paste. That's fine too. Go ahead and place 2 pears or 3 if your heart desires onto the almond paste, and just make sure that the tips of the pears are facing towards the tip of the pastry so everything lines up nicely. Then you're going to take the 2 edges and you're going to wrap them over the filling and just press them together tightly so that way they can stick and that way they won't open when they're baking. And then press it down to spread the filling a little bit, and then transfer the pastries onto your lined baking trays. Again, they're lined with parchment paper. Put them on there. I don't put more than 6 at a time because they are going to puff up and you don't want them to stick together. Now, once they're on here, I like to put another little dollop, not a whole tablespoon, just a little bit, like half a teaspoon of the almond paste on top. I also like to sprinkle some sliced almonds over it. I also like to brush them with a little bit of heavy cream on top. I used to brush these with an egg wash, but it gets a little bit too eggy tasting for me. This way, with the heavy cream, they get that beautiful color without that eggy taste on them. Okay, so once the pastries are ready, they have to go in the freezer for a few minutes, because the thing about puff pastry is it really needs to cool a little bit. If you've been working with it at room temperature, the butter in it starts to melt, and if you pop it in the freezer for a few minutes while the oven preheats, it's going to puff up beautifully. If you've ever made puff pastry desserts and they're kind of flat, that's the reason. You need to freeze them. If you freeze them for a little bit or chill them in the refrigerator, wherever you have room, that will not happen. They're going to be puffed and beautiful and flaky. So go ahead and preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, while these pastries chill in the freezer. Then you're going to take them out and you're going to bake them on the center rack for 30 to 35 minutes or until they're beautifully golden all around. Once they come out of the oven, I like to brush them with an apricot glaze that's so easy to make. I just take some apricot jam, about 1/4 cup of it, and then I add some really hot water to it, 2 to 3 tablespoons, just to thin it out. And I brush it on the pastries while they're nice and hot, and that really gives them a beautiful shine once they're done and some more sweetness, because puff pastry doesn't have that much sweetness or flavor. So it's a really nice bakery trick that we used to do at the bakery. We used to glaze all of our fruit that went on cakes and our pastries with this apricot jam, and everyone loved it. So that's all I do. If you don't want to do that, you can just wait until they cool down and just dust them with some confectioner sugar. It's just that simple. The house is just going to smell incredible. These smell so good. They taste amazing. Let them cool a little bit, and then they're ready to serve. Make some coffee or tea and call some friends over to share them. They're so good, and they freeze well too. But the thing is, I've honestly never tried freezing them with the pears in the pastry. So I'm not sure how pears freeze. So if you want to make these for the freezer, then either leave the pears out altogether, or you can use some canned pears, because canned pears are already poached, so they will not break up once you freeze them and then bake them. If you do try it with the fresh pears, please let everyone know in the comments how it works out. I love to have these on hand because when my freezer is well stocked, if people decide to stop over last minute, I do not panic at all. I love having guests over, and one of the reasons is I'm usually well prepared. But anyway, enough of that. It's time for the taste test. Oh my goodness. I cannot describe how good this is. This is definitely better than any almond croissant that I've ever tasted, except for the ones that I make, because, and I'm not just saying that to be a show off or anything like that, but I love to fill my croissants and my pastries generously. A lot of times you go to the bakery or to a pastry shop or somewhere, wherever you get pastries, and there's just like a joke of a filling in those things, whether it comes to cakes, croissants, turnovers, whatever. They're just so cheap with the filling, and I'm not. Put some love into food whenever you make it, and I promise you everyone's gonna love it, and it's gonna taste so much better. I hope you guys give this recipe a try. Oh my God, it's so good. You guys are gonna love it. Head on over to the website to print it out, dimitrasdishes.com. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes, us.